So you've got a gig playing behind a singer, which is absolutely awesome, and I bet you can't wait to be up on stage, jamming out with that singer in front of the audience. It's going to be fantastic. But just a second, because if we're real here, most saxophone players actually completely butcher this the first time they try it, and that's because without a clear strategy, it's really hard to know what notes to play and even how to do this convincingly. So in today's session, with the help of Matt from the Sax School tutor team, how you doing, Matt?
Good.
We're going to talk about 3 tactics that you can put into play straight away so that you can make great choices about your notes and the ways you construct melodies and really rock it up on stage with that singer. Lots to talk about today. Let's get stuck in. All right, Matt, there's so much to talk about today, but what's the very first step? If you're brand new to this whole process of playing with a singer as a saxophone player, what's the very first thing you think that we need to focus on?
Well, definitely my biggest mistake that I did was overplaying, playing too much and trying to show off too quick. So definitely want to focus on playing in the gaps. You know, give the singer a moment, respond. It's like a conversation. Very similar to Billy Joel's New York State of Mind, one of my favorite saxophone, pop saxophone moments, where Billy will sing, the sax player will play a little bit. They have that moment where the sax gets the shine, but it's a lot of give and take and a lot of conversation. So playing in the gaps is definitely the first step.
I love that. So, and that's a simple thing too, right? Just identifying the spaces in between where the singer is not singing, and then there's a space for you to come in as a saxophone player. So what's a good example? What should we choose a song and talk about that today?
Yeah, let's do a Kanye West song. Do a little hip hop. Why not?
Oh, why not? Something a bit different. Okay. So if you were approaching this for the first time, then what would be your process to find where those gaps are?
Obviously listening through and seeing exactly what he's doing, because he's a very lyrical rapper. So let's take a listen through, hear the spaces, and maybe mess around in those little spaces.
Hey, welcome to the good life. It's a sale, won't even get pulled over in they new V. The good life, let's go on a living spree. They say the best things in life are free. The good life, it feel like Atlanta, it feel like LA, it feel like Miami, it feel like NY. Summertime shy. So I roll through good.
Hey, by the way, if you want to check out more about playing behind a singer and learn how you can really develop those skills in your playing, then you want to check out the lessons that Matt's doing for us inside Sax School. And as I'm filming this, we've got a 14-day trial. Links for that are down below. So Matt, you've been doing a whole bunch of amazing gigs over the last few years. I know you've been touring with Brandon Flowers. Probably didn't get to do a lot of interaction with the singer on that gig. Can you give us some examples of other things you've been doing where you have got to use some of these skills?
Well, the Brandon Flowers gig was a blessing because it was very straightforward. But I get calls a lot to play with hip-hop artists, so specifically Chai the Prince on Kanye's label when he was putting out a song called Long Damn Time. The producer sent me over, hey, Matt, we want you to play over this song, and they'll just send me his song and say, we want saxophone, figure it out. So I actually do very much so utilize these skills because it's exactly what I have to do. You get a track, and they say, we want sax.
I mean, that's pretty cool. That's right at the top level. I think what's also interesting about this conversation today, Matt, is that you're doing like the real thing. You're doing this for real on albums that are going out, but it's exactly the same process you can use even if you're just starting off doing this the first time with a local singer. Oh,
absolutely. It doesn't matter what level, right? These principles apply to everyone from beginning to, the most advanced, person. They're definitely helpful. I wish I had this when I was coming up.
Hey, me too. All right, so we know now not to play over the singer, so we want to play in the gaps. So the next question really is, well, what do we play when we're not playing where the singer is singing? So how do we start making our note choices? And can you give us a couple of easy pointers for that?
Well, they say there are no wrong notes. They lie. So I like to take inspiration from the track. I love to take inspiration from what the singer is doing, or perhaps what a guitarist is doing or a synthesizer is doing. But in hip-hop, specifically this track, it's really great to take inspiration from the bass line.
So just before you give us an example of that then, Matt, so would you be listening to that bass line and trying to identify the notes and find them on your saxophone?
Absolutely. I'll listen to the bass line, I'll write it down, and just use those notes.
I mean, that's brilliant, isn't it? Because you know those notes are going to work because the bass player is actually using them. And they're also often quite easy to identify, right? The bass notes, particularly in this sort of music where the bass line might be quite repetitive. And if you were, on a gig and you didn't have the luxury of taking the time to write those notes out, then I guess you just speed up that process and do it on the fly, trying to identify the notes on your sax.
Absolutely, and it doesn't have to be all the bass notes. Like, if you're having trouble hearing it or it's muddy in the mix or something, okay, if you get 2 or 3, great. Just start with the 2 or 3. It doesn't have to be the whole bass line, and you don't have to play verbatim. Just get an idea of, all right, he's playing this, or he or she is playing these notes. Cool, I'm going to try just those notes.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. I know for us who are more experienced, we get much faster at the process of hearing something and playing it quickly. But if you are newer to saxophone or earlier on your journey, like you say, it can be harder to find those notes. And so what I often see players doing is they might find 1 or 2 notes, and then as their solo goes on or as the song goes on, they'll start to discover more notes, and they'll build up a little group of notes that they can use that they know that are safe. It's such a nice, easy way to make a solo that works, right?
Yeah, and as you start playing over it, to your point, your ears open up. You get more accustomed to the song, and you start hearing things that you didn't hear before. So yeah, you might add to that arsenal. You might start with 2, 3 notes, and those are your safe notes, and it works. And as you progress and you keep playing, having fun over the track, figuring it out, you're like, oh, wait. Oh, okay, I heard that one. Oh, and that sounds good. Cool, I'm going to add that. And then you start to open up your arsenal into things that are sound good.
Welcome to the good life. Is a sale, won't even get pulled over in they new V. The good life, let's go on a living spree. They say the best things in life are free. The good life, it feel like Atlanta, it feel like LA, it feel like Miami, it feel like NY. Summertime shy.
Hey, just before we get into our third tip to share with you today, have you ever played behind a singer at a gig? How did it go? Let us know in a comment down below. I'd love to know. Okay, Matt, we know now not to play when the singer is singing. We also know how to easily choose some notes that are definitely going to work. So what's the third step? What's the third thing we can do to really spice up our solos and make them sound more interesting?
So now let's change it up with some rhythm. And what's really fun about rhythm for me is very similar to all these big, jazz cats, Miles Davis, Chet Baker, all these amazing players. They can literally play a rhythm on 1 note, and it can sound amazing and captivate an audience. There are so many performances, some of my favorite, that's what they do. And Clifford Brown is notorious for that as well. So you could change up, you can use 1 note, literally 1 note. I know it sounds crazy, but you use 1 really good note and change up the rhythm and make it fun, make it simple, make it intricate, whatever, and it'll sound amazing. So, we can try that on this track for sure. And if it sounds good on 1 note, think about if you just had 2. So
there you go, man. I love it. It's such a great tip. It doesn't need to be complicated, right?
No.
And the other thing too, I suppose, like on the one hand, keeping it super simple is a great thing to have in the back of your mind, and it's a great tool if you're feeling a little bit stressed or pressured when you're having to make up these solos. But there's another great way that you can come up with new ideas too, by just like when we looked at the bass line for melody notes, we could look at the song itself for rhythmical ideas too, right? How would that work?
Absolutely. There's a really nice sample in this Kanye song that the rhythm rather, is just da 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 da. You can play that the whole time and it would sound amazing. And you could do it on 1 note. Da 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 da. And it would just groove, because again, something that people forget when coming to play this is, I got to play a lot of stuff. It's like, no, that's not what people want to hear with pop saxophone over a pop track. It's not all this crazy jazz language that everyone slaves over. You just want to groove. And so if it's a simple melody with just 1 or 2 notes but it grooves, whew, that's all you need. You're good.
I love it. And I guess the other thing too, when you're taking rhythms from the actual texture of the song itself, it's familiar. You already know it works, but it's familiar for the listener too. So in every way, it's going to be an easy choice for you and an easy thing to listen to for the audience. So it really, really works. Maybe you can pop the track on now and give us an example of how this works.
Let's do it.
Hey, welcome to the good life. When is a sale, won't even get pulled over in they new V. The good life, let's go on a living spree. They say the best things in life are free. The good life, it feel like Atlanta, it feel like LA, it feel like Miami, it feel like NY. Summertime shy. So I roll through good. Y'all pop the trunk, I pop the hood. Ferrari. And she got the goods, and she got that. I got the hood. Sorry. Yo, it's got to be, cause I'm see.
Oh, Matt, we've covered so much stuff in the session today, but I think we should just leave with 3 final tips, which I think are so important. The first one for me, my number one thing is you got to remember as a sax player, it's not about you, it's about the singer, and you've got to be complimenting what else is going on stage.
For me, it's keep it simple. Strong, clear melodies and rhythms. Whatever you play it confidently and it'll sound good.
Oh, I love that one. And the third one, I think, is it has to be, you've got to remember that it's practice is going to make perfect here. So you might feel uncomfortable when you're doing this at the start. If you can employ these simple tactics we're talking about today, it'll make it easier. But every time you do it, it's going to become more comfortable to you. You're going to be more confident. It's going to be easier. And most importantly, you're going to have a lot more fun.